start by paying my respects to the office bearers of MEASI, the President, who is unfortunately not being able to join us today, Thiru Imtiaz Pasha, Thiru Mandi Mohammed Aslan, the Honorable Vice President of MEASI MIIT, my good friend Thiru Elias Seth, Honorary Secretary, Thiru Yusuf Mohammed, the Convener, Thiru SMA Mohammed Salim, the Honorary Treasurer, my former colleague in government who served, I think, also with my father, the respected IAS officer Thiru Alauddin, who now serves as the chairman of the 7th State Finance Commission, Dr. Usha, the director, the many other office bearers and executive committee members of MEASI who were kind enough to welcome me and host me earlier for tea, the students, the graduates, the parents, the families, all of whom supported you through the years, the press, I see some reporters here, and other distinguished guests, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this very important occasion in the lives of all graduates who come out of any ceremony. I was speaking with the convener earlier and he told me about 100 and odd people were getting degrees, but 90 something of you only attended. And I was reminded that of my own 4 degrees, the first 3 of them, for various reasons, I couldn't attend. So I appreciate that a few cannot make it today, but I'm very happy that the ratio is so high. The director gave me such a big introduction that I'm not sure I can say anything to top that. But I want to start somewhere else. I want to start with history and the importance of MEASI to our society. My own legacy, as has been mentioned, is very deeply intertwined, inextricably intertwined with the social justice movement and the Justice Party. And our family goes back at least to the early 1900s in this movement. It was the primary reason why I decided to put a stop to my professional career at the age of 50, and very belatedly, but still with active years left, come into public service. In that sense, I would say MEASI also, with roots going back to the early 1900s, has had a profound impact on the shape of our society, the equitable outcomes that we all aspire to, and the provision of education, particularly to those who otherwise might not have been able to get access. And its history is remarkable. If my understanding is correct, this association came out of a conference, the All India Mohammedan Educational Conference, held here in Madras in 1901, in the days of the British Raj. And I think many people at that conference felt that there needed to be, for benefit of the public society, to advance the kinds of goals that, as I say, were at the heart of the social justice movement and the Justice Party. And so, towering individuals with great foresight, Janab A. Hamid Hassan Seth, Nawab Syed Mohammed Syed, Justice Sir Abdul Rahim Syed, Sir Muhammad Habibullah Syed, Nawab C. Abdul Hakim Syed, and most of all for me, Sir Muhammad Usman Syed, who was a close friend of my grandfather, who served with him in the Justice Party first Legislative Council under Dayaki, and went on to have many distinguished posts during his time. But they both were elected into, nominated into the first Madras Legislative Council after the Montague-Chelmsford reforms in 2021. In that sense, the more than century now, as the Secretary mentioned, coming up to 125 years, the work done by this yeoman kind of initiative is hard to overestimate. especially as we find the world is becoming more parochial, more frayed, and we see all kinds of negative connotations to the libertarian kind of harmonious, integrated approach that society ought to take, and in many ways was taking for the better part of the 20th century, then we find that such institutions are vital in ways that we may not even have thought about in easier times. But in particular, the vision to start new institutions as and when the need becomes apparent, to set up a special institution for architecture, one for management, one for information technology, and adapt to the times. Very often we find that institutions that last a century or more become staid, become kind of set in their ways, and don't have the ability to adapt and transform. And I'm very happy to note also the structure, as was explained to me, with 60 executive committee members, with a lot of input and a lot of ideas, that this institution continues, that the broader institution continues to lead the way and to keep bringing fresh thoughts and fresh thinking into the system. For those of you in this institute, I'm so happy to hear of the tremendous achievements. It is very hard to build institutions of excellence, and it's even harder to sustain the culture of excellence. So when I hear about the fact that of the 1,000+ alums, almost 75 have been rank holders in the university, and that tradition continues with this year, 4 of the 10 university rank holders coming from amongst you. I congratulate you, I congratulate the institution. It is a remarkable achievement. I also am very impressed and delighted to hear of the almost needs blind, which people like Harvard have been trying to implement lately, where the institution provides scholarships to talented students who are not able to pay the fees, and how that money, in the case of the Institute of Technology, is about 20 lakhs, and across MEASI is 10 times that, 2.5 crores. So I think this is an even greater testament to the notion of inclusion and equitable access, and goes on to shape a society where people from all kinds of backgrounds get to participate in the fruits of learning, then career growth, then kind of economic advancement from there. I have a particular personal connection also, in that my special personal assistant, government staff who practically runs my office, is a graduate of New College, and he's very happy to be here with me today. I don't know, he's somewhere in the ranks. So he was very keen that I should come and join him. As for the world of IT, there's a big buzz these days about AI. And I try to put things in context. I had the great luxury, as I was mentioning earlier today, of receiving my first personal computer in 1980 or 1981. It was the first introduced by IBM. It ran on Microsoft DOS, which eventually made Bill Gates who he is today. It had a green cathode ray tube screen, a dot matrix printer, and 64 KB of RAM and a 20 megabyte hard drive. Now you can imagine how far we have come. I think my phone has almost 512 GB of hard drive and probably 16 GB of RAM. So in the course of this evolution, there have been many so-called step function or inflection points as technology has evolved. What makes the most recent kind of shift to the era of AI unusual, I think, is that it is changing the nature of work, and therefore changing the nature of the kind of education that is required for people. I say this not as a technology perspective, but from an administration and a societal perspective. If you really think about it, what makes this coming of AI so unique relative to the rest of the comings of AI, and there have been many before, is that at this point we're able to generate unimaginably large amounts of data. Uh, Random places that you would never expect. This morning I was at a conference, my fellow speaker was the CEO or MD of Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, what used to be called MRL. And he was saying that they generate 1 terabyte of data every day, just their operations that they're monitoring. Their refining plants, their storage, their processing, their trucks, their pipes. So the amount of data that is being generated without additional thought, without additional effort, without conscious decision is humongous, and it is ubiquitous, and it is comprehensive. That has never been the case before. The second is the ability to store and retrieve it across a cloud, across a network, across distance, because of the hyper-connected nature of our world. The third is the ability to get access to computing power of unimaginable quantity on demand. That is, that you don't have to have $100 million to be able to use $100 million worth of computing power for 30 minutes. You can just buy that on the cloud from one of the hyperscalers. And so anybody with a good idea can find the data to test that idea and the computing power to validate it in ways that we have never envisioned before. That's really what makes AI today completely different than AI 2 versions ago, or 1 version ago, or 3 versions ago. In that sense, though we are still early stages, and though we are seeing huge limitations in these models, and though we are seeing all kinds of hallucinations, and we are starting to see these learning models start to tell lies, start to behave like human beings, trying to threaten people and all that, we're starting to see all kinds of unintended effects. Those are going to need different solutions. But still we are in the early stages. So even with all of the advancements that have happened practically in the last 24 months, it is still the early stages, and there's still going to be a lot of evolution and improvement to come. And it's going to require so much annotation and parsing of the existing data to make it machine readable and for the machine to learn. Particularly when it comes to things like automated vehicles, the amount of work it takes to make a machine actually process an image, to make the self-driving engine actually process images of particularly unexpected violations, like a fire truck parked in the middle of the road, or like a construction site where for some reason rain has damaged the barriers. So these kinds of things will take time. But what is very clear today, absolutely crystal clear to me, the nature of education and the nature of work is going to be changed forever. If you used to do relatively mundane things, relatively automatable in the old terminology, or machine learnable in the new technology, those jobs are probably going to change dramatically, either disappear or get aggregated in ways that we have not thought about. And yet all kinds of new jobs are going to come, and all kinds of new requirements are going to come. In many cases, as I pointed out, it is not in the structure of society that we can make machines, however sophisticated, with how much ever data, make decisions for which no human being takes responsibility. So for example, in the field of medicine, we are seeing AI learning models that have tremendous capability, that just because they have access to relatively infinite data can make far superior diagnoses to every human that can ever be a doctor. The problem is, what if it is wrong? If we allow that diagnosis to be delivered to a patient without a certified medical professional taking responsibility for it, and it turns out to be wrong, then what happens? So at the end of the day, we still have to figure out how we fit all of these things into the structure of society, where if it's an X-ray, then a qualified, board-certified, registered radiologist has to take responsibility for something that a machine did, which the human being could not possibly do because it's probably analyzed a million X-rays and come back with an answer. So these are the kinds of dilemmas we're going to see, and this is very relevant to all of you who are in the computer kind of business. The world of MCA has probably changed a lot already, and in my own view is going to change a lot more in very short order. I had the luxury earlier this year, I think in January, of being one of the guests of honor for the alumni reunion of my college, REC, Trichy, now called NIT. And my chief guest, who spoke with me at the same event, was also a batch of 1987, except I was the batch of 1987 chemical engineering, BTech honors, and he was the batch of 1987 MCA. First time REC had ever given an MCA degree, that was the first batch. And he is N. Chandrasekharan, who is now the chairman of Tata Sons. So his whole career was with TCS, and then through TCS to Tata Sons. I can't imagine how much the content has changed between what he was taught back in 1987 graduating class and what you have been taught coming out in the 2025 class. I bet that what the 2030 class comes out with will look entirely different again. So even though at this point you are graduating as relative specialists in your field, in an institution that has such a great tradition of excellence, that 4 of the 10 rank holders come from such a small cohort out of the entire university, I would suggest to you that your learning should never stop. This is a beginning in the sense that you go from full-time learning to a career, but in some other ways, as a philosophy of life, and particularly in the field of computer applications, I think it is a good philosophy to have, to be a lifelong student, to look to learn something new every day, to be infinitely curious. And whenever I'm asked about my path in life, I say some part of it is destiny. I'm the only child for my parents. I have this long tradition of social justice and public service, so I had to come. But whatever part of the journey was mine, the greatest asset of those 30 years in the middle where I got so many degrees and did so many things in so many places, was that I had insatiable curiosity. Every single day I wanted to know something more. Every single day I wanted to be a bit more aware, a bit more informed than I was the day before. And that has held me in good stead, both before entering public life and in public life. I would say I learned a tremendous amount in 5 years as an opposition legislative assembly member. I certainly could not have done the job I did as minister, particularly the job I did in my 2 years as finance minister, where I probably drove more change in those 2 years than in 20 years. And we'll ask Mr. Alauddin if that's right or not later. But I could not have done that if I had not had 5 years keeping on learning. Member of the Public Accounts Committee, reading thousands and thousands of paragraphs from tens of audit reports, figuring out how the government ought to work, how it was not working. And this was not my day job. I was only an opposition MLA. And as long as my constituents were happy, there was no need for me to go delve that deeply into all of those things. So I think that is the one advice I would give you in life in general, but in your field, and at this time in your field, this is only a beginning. Though it marks the ending of your degree and of your official studies, consider that this is the beginning of a new trajectory of learning out in the field, applying what you've learned in the academic institution, but continuously augmenting that with what you're learning as you build, as you do, as you create, as you execute, and as you experience. I think that you've had the great good fortune of being at one of the top institutions in a state where we have a lot of top institutions, and we try our best to have an equitable and harmonious society relative to most parts of India. That has been your luck, your fortune, as it is for all of us. And I think, in keeping with the tradition of the founders of MEASI, you must also keep some thought about your contributions back to your alma mater, your society, your community, and ways in which you can make your life more meaningful than just personal success or economic development or progress of your own standing. So I wish you all a very bright future. I congratulate you on your achievements. I congratulate the institutions, all of MEASI's institutions, for their yeoman work over 125 years. All the office bearers, all the director, the faculty, all of the staff. I hope your work continues and continues to impact many, many more thousands of lives in an inimitable way that only you can do. And I thank you once again for inviting me to be part of this wonderful occasion. Thank you very much.